Welcome to the Nonprofits, the thrice weekly show that looks at news and current events through the lens of atheism and secular humanism. For our first segment this week, there's a new COVID in town. Jason Friedman, get us going on this story.
Well, I'll tell you guys, it's coming for us again. A new version of COVID, seems to be looming on the horizon of the world stage. Well, it's named NB181. And scientists are stating that its symptoms may seem the same, but new mutations in the strain that differ from the SARS-CoV-2 may prove to be a problem for us in the near future. Are we prepared to deal with this looming threat, or will the United States drop the ball again? This story is from the HuffPost UK, and it's by Julia Ries. I hope I said that properly. And it came out on May 28th, 2025.
All right. Ominous stuff there. Jason, why don't you start us out by telling us, you mentioned that there were some similarities with previous variants of COVID. How is this one similar to what we've seen before?
I mean, pretty much what they're saying is that symptom wise, it's the same shit. There's really no glaring differences between the symptoms. They first detected it in China this past January, actually, and it accounts for about 10% of the SARS-CoV-2 sequences tested. And apparently that's been a significant jump from 2.5% about 4 weeks ago. The problem that they're saying is that there's certain mutations apparently that make it more transmissible. There's like a handful of new mutations, and it's on the spike protein, and it may enhance its ability to bind to our cells. And they're also saying that the variant may be skilled at dodging some of our immune defenses. Now, the thing is, they're saying there's no evidence suggesting that the variant is going to cause more severe diseases or an uptick in hospitalizations or deaths. And they're honestly just saying it's really too early to know exactly how effective shots are and everything. But scientists expect shots, they're going to hold up. So they don't really seem to be causing any type of public panic about it. But they're saying, hey, we should pay attention because, this is some new shit.
So it's similar enough that they feel that they have a grip on things and that you would expect if the vaccine stopped working or something like that, then it would maybe be a much bigger news story or something like that.
Well, yeah, but what they're saying is that, there's just, I think they're kind of hinting at okay, so your immune system was kind of your first line of defense, but they're saying this thing might have ways to dodge that. But they just don't really know. So,
all right,
because there was that old trope. Remember, it's well, I'm not immunocompromised, so I'll be okay.
Right.
So right here, they're being well, maybe you are healthy and pretty and strong, but that may not fucking matter. Yeah.
Yeah, AJ, let's jump over to you real quick here. Jason mentioned something about a spike protein, and I know that you had a little bit more information on that. What are the big added risks? What's the big difference here? How is it going to evade our existing immunosystems and stuff like that?
Yeah, like Jason just explained, it seems like it has very similar symptoms. What they're saying is things like your cough, nasal congestion, fever, sore throat, all of that stuff. So kind of all the same symptoms, take all the same over-the-counter medications and the usual treatment that you will typically get. But the difference is in the way that it transmits. They said that 10% of the cases are this new strain right now, and it went up from 2.5% a month ago. So this is indicating that it is increasing at a more rapid rate than all of the other strains that are currently around. And so with this specific strain, what the scientists found was that the mutations to the spike protein, which means that there is a potential for making it easier to transmit, but they still don't know that for sure because it's such a new strain that, they are still testing what's going on with it. But this is what we do. This is what science does. They can forecast the transmission rate based on what the mutations they are seeing on the spike proteins and how fast it's moving across all of the population.
Right.
Probably.
So you could You could even say we're seeing evolution happening right in front of us. It's like this new, you said that 10% of the cases, it's not like there's been a big jump in cases. It's just that the balance of the different strains has shifted. So this new strain somehow, maybe it's because of this spike protein mutation or something, but somehow this new variation is outperforming and outcompeting the other COVID variants out there.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. Yeah, it is causing mutations to the spike protein, and I'm sure that all of that, what we just said, makes no sense to our listeners, and they're wondering, what the fuck is a spike protein anyway?
Right, exactly. It sounds kind of dangerous, actually.
Right. Yeah. So let me get a little bit nerdy over here and try to explain it in a way that might make it easier for people to understand. So,
all right.
When you have tiny organisms like bacteria or fungus, they can survive on their own. Mm-hmm. They can replicate without needing a host or something to help them reproduce. But viruses require a host in order to make a copy of themselves. So what they do is like they find a way inside the host cells. Now the host can be any living organism, but in the case of COVID, it is human cells. Mm-hmm. So human cells are protected by an outer layer that keeps them, contained within the cell and healthy. So this keeps all kinds of pathogens out, like bacteria and fungus and viruses. So viruses have these tiny little spikes. If you've ever seen like a graphic of what this little cartoon viruses look like, the COVID, it's like a little ball, right? And it has all of these little things sticking out of it. Yeah. So like the little spikes are the spike protein. Okay. And so these spikes are what poke through the human cells to the outer layer of the human cell, right? And so when the virus comes with mutated spike proteins, what this can mean is that those spikes are more effective at poking through our cells, and therefore they make it easier to transmit from one person to another. These are things that people need to learn about when it comes to biology and trust in science. We don't blindly trust the authority of science. Like we trust the consensus, because many scientists have studied this. They have corroborated that this is correct, that this is what it's doing, that this is what it's going to do. So that's how we know things. That's how we can predict things in things. Science.
Yeah. It's crazy you say that, AJ. When I worked in the research center, I worked at UTMB. I mean, God, I did so much shit, and it's people act like these things are like these weird conspiracies and these scientists. Like you would just go in and you do a surgery and it's on this heart study, and then we do another surgery and it's related to this like antibiotic we're developing. Then I go stain some slides and I look for different things and whether it's blood or if it's feces or blah blah blah. So it's pretty fucking mundane. Honestly, you just end up finding this stuff and there's no conspiracy. I just think it's cool. Like, I think it's cool that it looks like a little tiny fucking battle mace and it just jams into your shit. I mean, it's terrifying, but I think that's pretty awesome. I don't know. I just had to throw that in there. It made me think about that. It's cool when you find shit like that. Like, oh, that's fucked up. That's a mast cell. That's wow, that's not good. It'd be like, oh, okay, maybe I shouldn't think it's that cool, but but it's pretty cool.
Yeah, I feel the same way about science. I fucking love science. I have my microscope behind me. Like my kid and I always like look at shit. Like I poke my finger, we'll look at blood. We once got to see like the moving blood cells, and it's like that's the way you create curiosity of people.
Dude, AJ. So look, I've got this cauliflower ear from fighting right here. See, I don't know if you can see it. There's that little nugget right there. So when I got it was real like swollen one time and hanging over, and I was at the research center. So I stabbed it with a syringe and I sucked it out, and then I stained it. It was beautiful. Oh, cool. It was because it was like all these little chunks and like different platelets, and it was beautiful, and it looked like a galaxy. I thought it was really, really neat, and it was like drained a couple mils of blood out of my ear. It hurt, but yeah, I'm sorry. I digress.
Oh,
Sorry.
no, that's fine. But I want to stick with you for a second, Jason.
Okay, what's up?
I want
Do
to
not try that at
before
home,
we do
though.
that though. AJ, there's never too much. You can never be too nerdy, and at least not any show that I'm on. So just so keep bringing the nerdiness here. We love that. Jason, I wanted to. So we're talking about these variants constantly evolving,
Okay.
and of course, there's always new viruses popping up all the time. It seems. And so, how important is public awareness and readiness for this kind of thing? I mean, so we looked at the science thing. Now let's look at the social aspect of it.
Well, I mean, especially with today's social climate, especially here in the States and being in the state that I live in, living here in Texas, it's, our track record isn't the best, right? Especially when it's related to COVID and public health, things like that. So, and then we look at the people who were in charge of the first COVID thing and all that stuff, like they really dropped the ball.
Right.
And a lot of those people are still overseeing those things, and their buddies are now overseeing other things that are related to all the things like health and safety and, disease and all that shit. So I'm just worried that, like we've seen recently, there's an increased amount of poor management. Mm-hmm. So I'm just worried that if we have something like this, like last time we had a lack of reaction and we saw what happened. Right. And there was a severe amount of like uncertainty and unnecessary harm. And it could have been pretty easily mitigated because we saw that it was easily mitigated in a lot of other places with very similar social structures. Sadly, like whenever that first wave hit in New York that everybody remembers, my aunt was part of that. Mm-hmm. And she got COVID and she fucking died. They had no ability to deal with it. So look, if our resources had been properly utilized and we actually quarantined people, and did the thing that we did, like that's like, called group cohesion and working together and pro-social behavior, and we like utilized it and actually gave a fuck about each other, then like countless people wouldn't have had to die. And like there's places that are like have a higher urban saturation than New York, which is wild, that did much better than us. Uh-huh. And people still had groceries and people still had their power on and people still had health care too. But in the United States, the problem is...
So we know it wasn't an impossible task, right? I mean, it's definitely within the realm of possibility here.
Well, what's fucked is like, if you take time off work here, especially like in Texas, like you're fucked. Like you can't take time off work. I oversee very important shit in the oil and gas industry. I have a lot of responsibility with my job. Mm-hmm. I cannot take time off. If I take time off, they just give my job to somebody else. I have very important medical procedures coming up, and in other countries, I'd get 4 to 6 months off of work with pay. Right. I'll be able to take 2 weeks off if I'm lucky. If I'm lucky. And it's disgusting.
Yeah,
because
that's frustrating.
Like, it's frustrating is the nicest way of putting it. But yeah, poor me, right? It's just, I'm an American. I'm lucky to be here, right? Fucking lucky. So
America.
What are you gonna do?
Yeah,
America.
That's the tagline, all right.
So yeah, and I've been rambling, but look, as far as I'm concerned right now, if something shitty is happening in these borders, then I just expect a shitty response and and then a way for somebody to capitalize on it and make a whole lot of money. Like we saw with alcohol companies and all those other things. They made a lot of money off of our tragedy and sucked more money out of our economy and fucked us even deeper. So,
well, Jason, a lot of people share your pessimism. In fact, I'm going to share a little bit of research here with you. Speaking of waxing a little bit nerdy here. Okay. So this is according to a recent poll by a health policy research organization called KFF. They said less than half of the U.S. public expressed confidence in government health agencies like the CDC and the FDA to carry out many of their core responsibilities, including just 3 in 10 or 32% who have confidence in them to act independently. And this is key here, act independently without interference from outside interests.
Yep.
6 in 10 adults, including 3 in 4 Democrats and nearly half of Republicans, say these agencies are not paying enough attention to science when it comes to making decisions and recommendations about vaccines. In addition, at least 3 in 10 say these agencies are paying too much attention, quote unquote, to the belief of officials running the agencies, 34%, and the interests of pharmaceutical companies, 30%, when making vaccine-related decisions. Now, before I ask this next question, which is going to come to AJ, but before I ask that question, I do want to point out that these aggregate numbers that I was just reading off are not necessarily due to any recent changes. These numbers have stayed rather steady for the last several years, although there's been a kind of a partisan shift. And so the more recent studies show that the Democrats' trust is decreasing while the Republicans' trust is increasing. And so, but this poll does not take into very recent changes into account, things like mass firings at these organizations and so forth. So having said all that, and this is going to AJ, what does the lack of trust in critical government health and safety efforts tell us about how those organizations fit into society? It seems like a silly question that when I ask it here, but should the government be in the business of keeping its citizens healthy? And assuming the answer there is yes, what can they do differently to change that attitude of Americans? So what we all agree that there's an issue here, that there's a problem with public trust in the government to have our best interest in mind. And so how can we change that? I mean, or is that something that can be changed? Is the system unfixable, and should it be chucked for maybe something else?
That's a really heavy question. That's loaded, tall order. But you know what? I do think, yes, the answer to that one specific question about whether the government should be keeping their citizens healthy, yes, they should have part in that. They shouldn't be like all up in your personal business, okay? But one of the examples I can think of right away is the funding cuts to the CDC. We did an article on the nonprofits last week regarding how these cuts affected communication. The Facebook page for the CDC hasn't been updated since like March.
Jesus Christ.
That's frustrating.
That's so fucking frustrating.
Before that, they would post 2 to 3 times a day. Okay. Right. And it wasn't just about vaccine. They would post about things like cancer research, like cancer prevention, how to take care of your pregnancy, like childhood conditions, all kinds of stuff, heart disease. It wasn't like anything super controversial. So they were trying to keep their citizens healthy. They were giving them the information that they needed to take care of themselves, to prevent them from getting sick, before they got sick. So you don't have to go to the doctor in the first place. Right. And so the problem here is that 1, the communication, 2, the funding cuts to like the actual institutions performing the research to then give the information to the public. Like if you're not able to perform your research, if you're not able to look at what is causing these diseases, how to prevent them, how to treat them once you have them, then you got nothing. You got nothing to communicate in the first place, right? So, yeah.
So even if there is an effort to keep us healthy, it's like being hamstrung from the beginning. Right. Yeah. They're working in the dark, and they're working with a muzzle on, and they're working with their hands tied behind. I mean, I'm running out of, metaphors here. I mean, it's hard to imagine how things are worked. Jason, what are your thoughts on that?
I mean, your blood pressure can be great, but if people break your leg every 5 years, I mean, I agree with you. I don't want to sound ableist at all, like having, difficulties or having anything like that. But I feel like it's more traumatizing than anything. We have a system that fucking exploits us every step of the way. From the moment we're born we're getting exploited. Before we're born, we're getting exploited. I mean, the birthing industry is one of the most exploitative industries in the fucking world. It's insane what they do to people who give birth and to it's so insane. And then from I don't know. I mean, yeah, we're getting exploited every step of the way, and all we're seeing is just an increase of exploitation. So I don't expect it to get any more. I mean, you're asking the wrong. Yeah, you're talking to a fatalist. I don't expect anything to get any better. We're just one of my favorite books is The Temptation to Exist. And what we're seeing right now is it's a very typical thing that we see, the dying throes of a nation that was once great. And this is what we're descending into. It's typical. It's like a fucking narcissist who is discarding their former supply. And that's what's happening. You become amoral. You eventually see what happens. People just like stop giving a fuck. They stop hiding. I mean, if you think Iran-Contra was fucked, I mean, wait until you see what's happens here in the next 4 years. It's so blatant that like nobody cares. Like shit that nobody would say 20 years ago. They're just, laughing about in public, and people just suck it up. So I don't expect anything to get better. Everything's going to be mishandled from here on out. Just get the fuck out of this country. It's the best thing we could do.
Well, I hope that I share many of those feelings, Jason. And the thing I keep saying to myself is, I hope I'm wrong. I hope I'm wrong. And, I have some friends that are more optimistic about the situation. And
fuck no.
When I talk to them, that's all I can say is, I hope you're right. I hope you're right. I don't know. AJ, any last words before we wrap up here?
Yeah, no, I feel that deeply. But as someone that came from another country and over 20 years ago, I came here because there was more hope here than what we had in my country.
Yeah.
And I still keep that hope. So yeah, that's why I stick around, and I don't.
Dude, that's got to be so terrifying to see. Dude, that's good, because 20 years ago there was so much reform going on, and then this hard swing has got to be so fucking like I'm terrified with my kid and what it's terrifying, especially where we live, dude. It's
I mean,
here
in Texas,
and what I've been dealing with in real time as of hours ago, I mean, it's no thank you. I'm fucking terrified for my kid. I'm terrified for my partner. I'm terrified. I don't like it. It scares the fuck out of me, and I'm already dealing with it, and I don't want to deal with this shit anymore. Go somewhere where if I'm going to deal with it, it needs to be less.
Right.
So
yeah.
The outright bigotry is just exhausting at this point.
Yeah, it's exhausting. That's a good way of saying it's just emotionally, mentally, physically, just exhausting in every way, societally. And so, I'll just repeat what I said. I hope we're wrong. I hope the optimists are right here. I mean, it seems like we're on a precipice at this point. We can make positive steps, we can make negative steps, but any step is gonna change the situation. And so I suppose we can hope and hope that I almost said we can hope and pray, but
we can hope and pray that
I'm on the wrong show. I think I'm on the wrong show.
No,
here.
let's do it. Let's pray. Come on, guys. Let's get on it.
So anyway, I think that'd be a good place a good spot for us to end the conversation. I want to thank you both for sharing some deeply felt emotional responses. And so thank you for that. I want to thank all of you for listening. If you want to hear more from the nonprofits, just hang tight and click on some of these links and you'll find much more.